All right, guys, this is going to be the video for Flip Section 5. And last time where we left off, I'm just going to show this really quick. Um, we've got where we can shoot the knight with the coconut and he gets stunned, and then after 3 seconds he gets unstunned. So that's kind of what your game should be doing right now. Now the thing we're going to start off with this video is you can see there's no collisions right now, so he can't hurt me, I can't destroy the knight, I can't do anything. So we're going to start off with that, and then we're going to do some stuff with adding some more objects to the game to collect and doing some more with our layers. So let's start with our collisions. So what we're going to do is we're going to go into the flip combat and collisions group. So once again, I recommend you keep all your groups minimized so it's not so confusing, and then you can open them up when you want to work on them. So remember, that's just this little arrow on the side here. So I'm going to go into the flip combat group. Um, Not much in there so far. I just have this, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click this add event to the flip combat collisions group button here. When you do the presentation, they'll always tell you to add a sub event to the group. So the other way you could do is I could right click on the group and I could add a sub event to it. But to me, like, using the word sub event gets confusing to people because I'm not actually making a sub event. I'm just putting an event in the group. Okay, this flip is mirrored is actually a sub event because it's sub evented to another event. So I like to just say when you need to add an event to a group, just click this button at the bottom of the group and it will let you add it right to the group. Okay, so I'm going to click this bottom that says add event to flip combat collisions, and we're going to do flip on collision with knight. So we're going to do flip on collision with another object. So I'll just type in the word collision. Okay, and I'm going to click and choose the knight. All right, so now I have flip on collision with knight. Then we're going to need a sub event here. So basically, there's going to be two situations. Flip is either going to collide with the knight when he's stunned or when he is not stunned. And basically, if we collide with him a certain way when he's stunned, we're going to make it so that we can actually destroy the knight. If we collide with him when he's not stunned, then Flip is going to get destroyed, basically. Okay. Uh, so I'm going to add a sub event to the knight, or Flip on collision with knight. So I'm going to right click on the green arrow, add sub event, and we're going to do flip. Or no, sorry, not flip. We're going to compare if the knight is stunned. So we're going to do knight, and we're going to do compare instance variable, and we want to know if his action equals stun. Now, we need to be consistent in the wording here. So I believe when we named it originally, we did stun with a capital S. We'll double check that. But we'll do it like that. So we're saying if flip collides with the knight and his action equals stun down here, we're going to make something happen. Now let's just go double check really quick. If we go to the knight actions group, these are all of the main actions here. And you can see we labeled them all with a capital letter. So we want it anytime we're referring to these actions, we have to refer to it exactly to how we created it here. So if you created all of these with a lowercase, then the event I'm doing now, you would actually want to do lowercase. So that's why when you're doing, if you're following along with the videos or with the presentations, it's really important you label everything exactly like you see it so that you don't get confused. One of the most common errors is students will like make these lowercase and not really look closely at how they're labeled in the directions, but then later on they're being more careful and then they use capitals later on, and then the code doesn't work because to a computer a capital R and a lowercase r in this instance are two completely different characters, so it won't actually connect those together and execute the commands. Okay, so yes, stun right there is perfect. All right, so back to my combat group. So we're going to collide with the knight with action equals stun. Now basically what we want to do to destroy the knight is we want it so that flip is falling on his head. So basically we want to make it so that he has to jump on his head to destroy him. We don't want any collision to work. Okay, so we have the action equals stun, so we're actually going to add a sub event to that to test if flip is falling. So we're going to do add sub event, and then we're going to do flip, and then we can type in is falling. Okay, so now the knight has to be stunned and flip has to be falling. So basically every time you sub event, it's basically harder for that event to execute, where basically everything above it is like another condition. So for this flip is falling to trigger, we have to be colliding with the knight and the knight has to be stunned. So there are two triggers that have to activate before this can trigger. Okay. Um, there's also going to be another condition on here. So we don't want flip to just like be falling anywhere, because like flip could be falling like into a stomach and that technically wouldn't be jumping on his head. So to make sure flip is jumping on his head, we're going to add another sub event to the knight action equals stun event. So right click this white open area here on the action equals stun. We're going to add another sub event to that. Or no, sorry, not a sub event, my bad. We can just add a condition onto this one. Sorry. So go to the flip is falling. We're going to right click and we're going to add another condition. Okay, and basically the condition is we want to make sure flip is above the knight. And what I'm going to do is we'll just put the event in now, and then I'll explain it to you so it makes sense. So we're just going to do flip, and then we're going to do compare y. Okay, so compare y is the command. Okay, and we want to know that flips y is less than, and for the comparison, we're going to compare it to knight.y minus 40. Now this might seem really confusing to you right off the bat, but I will explain it once we get the code in. Knight, y, okay, and then minus 40. Just a reminder too that when you're typing in code like this, that, like with the colored letters, this is actual code. It's not in quotation marks, so it's actually like referencing objects in the game. So it's got to be typed out perfectly. So just remember that as you're typing them, when those little windows pop up, you always want to click on the suggestions. Don't type it out manually, okay? All right, so this event says now, if flip collides with the knight and the knight is stunned, flip has to be falling and flip's y has to be less than knight.y minus 40. I know that part seems confusing. I'll get to that in a second, what that all means. First, we're going to add a couple of actions onto here. So basically, when all of this is true, this is where we're going to destroy the knight. So you're going to add an action right here next to the platform is falling sub event. And so what we're going to do is we're going to say knight and then destroy. Okay. And then what we're going to do is we're going to do something else that says flip. And we're going to do something called set vector y. And we're going to set it to negative 300. And I'm going to include this in my explanation. All right. So let me explain what this means. So basically, I think this makes sense that we collide. He has to be stunned and flip is falling, right? So flip y has to be less than knight.y minus 40. So let me go to my layout. Okay. Um, so flip.y references his origin point. So if we zoom in here, so flip.y is this position on his neck, basically. Okay, it's whatever that coordinate is. Knight.y, we'll zoom in a little bit here. Knight.y is this position right here. Okay, so basically, if we look at our layout, the top left coordinate is 0, 0, and x is from left to right. Okay, so as I move right, x increases, and as I move left, x decreases. Y is the same way, and this kind of confuses people, but y starts at 0 at the top, and as you move down, it increases. Okay, so the very bottom of my layout is like 720 for the y, and the top is 0. So basically here it's from 0 down to 720. So if we look at it at flip in terms of relative to where the knight is, as you move up, your y decreases, you subtract y. Okay, so the way we're coordinating or getting the top of his head is this. If this middle part is not knight.y, knight.y minus 40 is just 40 pixels above that middle point. So knight.y minus 40 equals this. Okay, so our event says, let's pretend the knight is stunned. Flip is colliding with him and he's falling, so he's coming from up above. And flips dot y, which is this point right here, has to be less than knight dot y minus 40, which is the top of his head. So thus the event is triggering if flip is falling on top of his head. If flip is falling and he's like down here, it won't trigger because knight dot y minus 40 is up here. Okay, so hopefully that part of it makes sense. Then the next part says the knight will get destroyed, and then flip will set vector y to negative 300. So what this event means, it basically will take flip's current y position and then subtract 300 from it. So basically what happens is this whole collision happens, the knight will get destroyed, and then flip vector y minus 300 basically makes him bounce up 300 pixels. So essentially it's going to simulate like what Mario would do is he would jump on a Goomba and he pops up a little bit. So it's just a nice little effect. If you don't have that knight minus y or that flip vector y minus 300, he just falls flat through. So let me actually demonstrate it because I believe it should work right now. with the code that I have in there. So he's stunned, you should hit, and you see Flip just bops up just a little bit. He just bounces, okay? So to see the significance of this, let's disable this. So by the way, when you're testing, if you just right click on an event, you can toggle it disabled and the event stays there, but it's not actually going to do anything. So it's a way to temporarily remove an event. So if I don't have that minus 300, I can now shoot the knight, but now Flip will just fall right through. So it makes him seem really heavy. So that bounce is just a nice touch. So I'm going to toggle it disabled again, and now it's re-enabled. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense for that part of it. So that's a really nice piece there. Now what we need to do, this is just our collision for like destroying the knight when he's stunned. So now we need a condition for when the knight is not stunned. So basically what we're going to do is we're going to take this knight action equals stun. You're going to right click it here and we're going to add another condition. Not another condition, sorry. Um, we are going to add an else, my bad. Add an else. So I'll repeat that again. So on this knight action equals stun, we're going to right click here and we're going to add an else. And so basically this else event now triggers any other condition. So basically this is saying if the knight is not stunned, then we're going to do the stuff for destroying Flip. Now this is one of the most common places I see errors is that this isn't sub-evented right. So like if this else is in like the wrong spot, it'll be red. So if you put this else in and it's red, it means it's in a spot that isn't appropriate. So if you do it correctly, it should be perfectly even with the knight. Like they should be at the same depth. They shouldn't be indented farther than the other one. And this else should be below that knight action equals stun. So if I minimize it, it should look like this. They should be like right next to each other. Okay. So the way I did it, that I just showed you, is I right clicked on the knight action equals stun and I just did add else like that. Now another way you could do it, technically this else is just a sub event of Flip on collision with knight. So another way you could do it is you could right click it, you could add a sub event, and the else is just a system command. So you could do system and then else like this. And you can see I just added another one underneath. Okay, so either way, just get it to look like this. So this else now means that I collide with the knight, but he's not stunned. Okay. So now what we're going to do is we're going to add several actions onto this. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to make it so that Flip gets frozen, like the player can't control them because they're about to, lose a life. So we're going to do Flip, and then we're going to do a command that's called start ignoring input. Did I do Flip ignore? Yeah. Oh, sorry. It's set ignoring input. Okay. So we want to do set ignoring and we want to start ignoring input. So that's a platform command. So basically it's going to ignore user input at that point, which means it's going to ignore any key presses that you make that would try to move Flip. We also want to freeze the knight. So we're going to add an action for the knight. And since the knight is AI controlled, like ignoring user input won't do anything. So we're just going to set his speed to 0. So we're going to do set max speed. And you want to make sure it's the max speed here. Okay. If I just type in speed, another really common mistake we'll see is that speed is referenced in several places. So a really common mistake is a student will set his animation speed to 0, which won't actually stop him from physically moving. So the max speed with the platform symbol means that's his actual platform movement speed. This is animation speed, which is something totally different. So we want to do set max speed under platform to 0. Okay, so it should look like this and it should have that little platformer guy there. Okay, that's going to make it so that the knight stops moving. And then we're going to switch the knight's action so he does a swinging animation. So we're going to add another action here for the knight and we're going to do set value because his action is an instance variable. So anytime you're using an instance variable, you're doing set value on that actual character. So I'm doing set value of action. And I believe we called this swing with a capital S, just like that. Okay. So we set the action to swing. And then we also want to set his animation so that he's doing the swinging animation. So we're going to add another action here. And we're going to do animation. We're going to set animation. Now with the animations, it should pick it up automatically. So if you delete the quotation marks and just type a quotation mark, you should see your options here. So I'm going to do swinging. Okay. So that's how that should look. So basically the way this event stacks up is you're going to collide with the knight. If he's stunned and you're falling on him and you're above his head, it's going to destroy the knight. Otherwise, if the knight's doing any other action but stun, you're going to stop controlling flip. The knight's speed's going to go to 0. We're going to set his action to swing, so it's going to do the action commands up above, and we're going to set his animation to swinging, so he actually does the swing animation. Okay. So then this one's just more of like a nice touch, but when flip collides with the knight after this else triggers, we're going to make the knight turn his body towards flip, because sometimes you might like run into his back, and it looks really weird if you run into his back and then he just swings facing away from you. So we're going to make an event that'll make the knight always face you when you collide with him. So we're going to add a sub event onto this else. So I'm going to add another sub event. And what we're going to do is we're going to compare the knight's x coordinate. So we're going to do knight compare x. Okay. Now x coordinate is from left to right. Okay, so that's what we want to use for this, to figure out what, basically we're going to compare what side of flip the knight is on, and then we can make him either mirror or not mirror based on that. Okay, so we're going to test first if the knight's x is greater than, and we're going to do flip dot x. Okay, and once again, make sure you're selecting from that menu there, not just typing it in manually. And you might not have seen me like click on them. All I'm doing is like they're highlighted and I press enter and it goes really fast. Okay, so if knight's x is greater than flip dot x, we're going to set knight to not mirrored. So we're going to do knight, set mirrored, and we're going to do not mirrored. Okay, because you can see by the knight's like little thumbnail picture here that by default he faces to the right, so that's his not mirrored status. And basically if knight's x is greater than flip's x, that means the knight is on the right side of flip. Okay, and just to demonstrate that, left to right is x coordinate, right? And x goes up as you move to the right. So right now my knight's x is greater than flip's x. If the knight goes to this side, um then his x would be less than flip dot x. So actually, oh yeah, I actually coded that wrong. It's actually less than, my bad. So yeah, so what we want to do is actually if the knight's x is less than flip dot x, this is when I want him not mirrored, because then he's facing flip there, right? So I'm going to go to that event. So since I did, I want to just change this to less than. Okay, so this should be knight's x is less than flip dot x, then we set to not mirrored. Because if you see here, now that he's less than, we want him facing to the right. Now, if the knight's x is greater than flip dot x, I need him to turn around, so he's facing flip. So I'll put him back here. Okay, so then basically what I would do is I would just copy this event. So if you just right click it and copy it, and then right click it again and paste, it'll just put another one right here. The other trick you can do is you can hold down control and you can just click and copy it like that and just drag it up above. So this one I'm just going to reverse it. So I'm going to say if the x is greater than, and actually I'm going to make this one greater than or equal, just so that we cover a situation where that if flips x is exactly equal to it, the knight has something to do. And then here we'll set this to mirrored. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. So it should look like this. And we can test it really quick. Flip isn't actually going to die yet because we haven't coded that, but we should be able to see the collision work. So hopefully if we do this right, and I'm going to try to hit the knight from behind, and you can see, yep, he turned around and attacked me. Okay. And then we'll try to do it while he is facing me. You can see he just stays that way. He stays not mirrored. And I can try it from the other side really quick. By the way, when I'm testing this, since I haven't coded anything to happen, the game is basically frozen forever. So I'm just pressing F5 to restart. But you can see he turns towards me when he attacks. So that's just a nice little touch there. All right, so we've got that part done. All right, so that's pretty much it for like the flip knight collisions for now. Okay. We are going to code a little bit later and make it so that like the game restarts and flip will actually die, but we're going to do that a little bit later. All right, so let's go back to our layout. So I'm just going to click my, and you can do it on level 1 here is fine because we haven't made other levels yet, so I guess you don't have a choice. And we're going to add some sprites. Now, you want to make sure that you are on the correct layer before you insert sprites. So right now we just have a main and a background. So right now we're just going to make everything on the main layer. So make sure the main layer is highlighted. You can just double click outside your layout here, and we are going to make a sprite, and it's going to be called a banana. And this is just going to be an object we can collect for points. So once you add the banana, just click on the screen. Go ahead and go into your load folder and find the image. And once again, I have to kind of dig and find mine because I haven't done this in a while here. Let me see here. Old desktop, and then intro to game, and then flip images. All right, so you should it should have just taken you right to this because you've been programming your game like in a row. All right, so here's the banana. Now on the banana, you're going to want to zoom in on it so you can pretty much get it as big as you can. And what we're going to do on this is we're going to fix the collision points. So if we go to the left here underneath, so this here is your origin points or your image points. Below that, we have collision points or what's called a hitbox. And you can see its hitbox isn't that great. It's trying to guess it, but it can't really figure it out. Um, Basically, you can take these little red boxes and just move these points around to try and get it to fit the banana a little bit better. Okay, so I'm just kind of moving these around. And it doesn't need to be perfect. Now, if you want to add more, like right here, I might want to bring it in to get that edge. If you just double click one, it'll make another one. So then I could move this one down here and I can move this one back up here. So if you double click on a collision box, it will make another one that you can use. Something like this is fine. It doesn't need to be absolutely perfect. This is such a small object. You just don't want something like glaringly bad, like having it jut out like this, because if Flip touches this empty space, then he would collect it and it doesn't really look like you're touching it. So you just want it to kind of hug around there, but it doesn't have to be perfect. Okay. So then what we're going to do is we are simply just going to create some of these on the layout. So once again, you can just hold control and drag them. And if you want them to line up really nice, you could make a grid. So if you click on your level 1 on the right, you could just turn snap to grid on, and you could just go with the grid that was there if you wanted to, and they would snap into that grid. Now it's going to be a little bit limited. So if you are okay with how they're spacing out, I think we left off with the grid on the platform, so it's 55 by 40. You could if I click on this, you could adjust this 55 by 40 grid size if you want to make it smaller. Otherwise, you can either go without the grid or not. It's totally up to you. But they do look nicer if they're like lined up in some way. So I'll just leave those on there with the grid, but I'll just put those 3 bananas on there and I'll turn my grid stuff off for now. Remember the other way is, so I showed you just hold control and you can drag them out, or you can go over to here in this object type window and you can drag them out from over there and they'll go out that way as well. So that's another way you can get those bananas on there. Okay. Next, what we're going to do is we're going to set up an ammo system for the gun. So right now, Flip basically can just shoot infinitely. So we're going to set up an ammo system where he's going to run out of ammo, and then we're going to make an ammo item that he can collect. So I'm just going to double click out here again. I'm going to make another sprite. I'm going to call it ammo. I'm going to insert it. Go up here, it's just a single image we're going to load, and it's going to be this 3 coconut thing called ammo. This one will look at the collision boxes, but that's actually fine. You can just leave that. You don't really have to mess with that. That one should be pretty good. Okay. And then just like the banana, we just want to put some out here. So I'll just throw a couple out here for testing just so we have some. And that's all we should have to do there. Then what we're going to do is, now that we're getting more objects and we're getting a little bit more complex, we're going to have to add some more layers to this. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to go down to our layers window. We are going to right click and we're going to add a layer at the top, and we're going to call it blocks. Okay. And the blocks layer, we're going to have that below the main layer. So I'm going to just drag that underneath like this. Okay. And then basically the blocks layer is going to be our platform and our ground objects. So remember, all you'd have to do is, let's say I click on this ground object here. If I go to the properties here on the left, it'll show me the layer and I can switch it right here. Now to go and highlight all of these is kind of a pain. So a really good trick is if you go on the right side here in your project window, if you click an object like the ground, you'll see it automatically highlights every ground on the layout. And then I can click the layer here while they're all highlighted and switch them to the blocks layer. Okay, same thing with platform. If I click platform here on the right side, you'll see it highlights every platform. And I can switch those also to the blocks layer. Okay, so now I have those all on the correct layers. My bananas and ammo right now should be on the main, which is where I want them. Perfect. Okay. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to make a HUD layer. It's called HUD, and HUD stands for heads up display. And basically that's referring to any like text and information that we're giving to the player. So things like score, lives, level, all that kind of stuff. So what we're going to do is we're going to right click the layers window. We're going to add a layer at the top and we're going to call it HUD, HUD all capital, because it's just an abbreviation for heads up display. And then eventually what's going to happen is we're going to be putting text objects on that layer. Okay. Um, what I'm going to do is let's make our first text object because I want to demonstrate what parallax is, and that's something that's really important. So once you make this HUD layer, just make sure that HUD layer is highlighted. We're going to double click out here to add another object, but this time we're going to make an object called a text. So you can type it in the search bar or just scroll down a little bit and find it, but here's a text object, okay? And I'm going to label it text lives by just abbreviating TXT and then lives with a capital L. Remember, programmer etiquette is when you're labeling and naming stuff, we don't use empty spaces. The computer doesn't like it. And in fact, if I were to try to put a space in here, it would give me an error and tell me to rename it. So we just separate words with capital letters. So I did text with a capital T, and then lives with a capital L. I'm going to click insert, click on the screen to put it somewhere, and it's just going to be this little text box here. Okay, and it's kind of hard to read. When I drag it down here, you'll see the word text. So we want to make it easier to see because it's going to be like up here in the left somewhere. So if I go down, and I can make the box a little bit bigger if I need to, but if I go down here in the lower left, there is a color spot right here. So I can click on this and I can just change the color to white if I want to do that. So I could just pick any of these, go ahead and drag up here and make it white. Okay, so now my text is white and we can actually see it. Okay, now I'm going to show you the issue that we have. So I'm going to run the game. So you can see my text object is up here and it's going to say lives or whatever. But watch what happens as my game scrolls. So I'm going to just start walking here. So you see as it scrolls, that text just flies off the screen, right? Everything is just set to scroll. So what we have to do is something called parallax, and parallax refers to parallax scrolling. So if I click on each of these layers here, I'm going to start by clicking on the HUD layer. There is a setting here called parallax. Basically, parallax is the rate that that layer will scroll. And the reason why we have two numbers is because one is the rate that it scrolls on the x-axis, and one is the rate that it will scroll on the y-axis. So if my game were scrolling up and down too, I would want to set a parallax for that. So basically, we don't want that to scroll at all. We want it to basically just be anchored in the corner. So I'm going to change the parallax to 0, 0. So if I just type 0, comma 0, that will set my parallax to 0% by 0%. Now that I've changed the HUD layer, you should see that as I move, I'll skip past the night here, you see that it's just anchored there. That's because the parallax was set to 0, 0, so it doesn't scroll, okay? Now watch carefully as I move. See how it looks like the blocks are basically stuck to the background? And as I scroll, the blocks and background are all just moving at the same rate. So parallax can also be used to give your game dimension and make it look like there's more depth. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our background layer, which is that brick wall. We're going to make that scroll a little bit slower. So it's going to kind of separate it from the blocks and give it more dimension. So just pay attention, look at the blocks in the background, see how it's scrolling right now. So now we're going to go back to our game. You're going to click on your background layer and we're going to change the parallax to 75 by 75. So do 75, comma 75. Okay, now watch that very closely. Watch the blocks compared to the background as I start to move here. Okay, see that now? the background scrolls slower. So the blocks now have almost like pulled themselves away and separated. And now the game has more dimension. It looks like that background is a lot farther away. So you could have, and you've probably played games like this that have multiple layers in the background where there might be a row of trees and then some mountains or hills and then maybe some clouds. You could have those all on separate layers with separate parallaxes, and the idea is as objects get farther away, they would scroll slower and slower and slower. So if you built up multiple layers, you could really have fun with the parallax. Now I can't do it here, but let's say this image, like let's say I had this brick wall and this window was just like transparent, and then these trees were actually a different image behind it. I could make it so the trees in the background there scroll at a different rate, and that would actually look really, really cool. But this demo image they've given us, that's just a part of the image, so we can't make that scroll differently. But I would say if you were designing your own, that would be really fun if you had a game with windows to actually have a separate whole picture behind the window, and then that picture scrolled at a slower rate. That would really add some depth to your game. Okay. All right. So hopefully that little piece on parallaxes makes sense. Um, All right, we're getting close here. So we did the text, we put that up there. Now this is going to be called, this is for lives. So temporarily, just to label it, if I click on that text up there and the properties, there's a properties here called text. I can just type in a word. I'm just going to type in lives. Now when we actually do this, this thing I just did actually doesn't matter. It's just visually when I'm editing, it's nice that I know that's the lives text. But we're actually going to do the actual text that's going to appear there through code. So for now, I'm just making it say lives. We could even make it bigger if we wanted to. So like if I wanted the size, I could go down here on the left. Maybe I want it to be like 24. I could make the lives really big if I want to. Just keep in mind if you make your text really big, you want to make the text box larger so that it can all fit. If your text at any point does not fit in the box, it'll actually disappear. It won't actually physically appear there. So I recommend you make your text boxes bigger than what you think you need so that you don't have that issue. Okay. All right. So next, let's make a couple of other text objects. So I'm going to click and make sure I'm on my HUD layer. We're going to make two more text objects here. So go ahead and double click. We're going to go to text, and I'm going to do one that's called text ammo, TXT ammo, like that. So I can actually track how much ammo I have. Click on the screen to insert it. I'll just, well, actually, we'll edit it right now. So we'll have it right here, and we're going to change the color to white. So let's go ahead down here, color, make it white. And then I'll change the size. Sure, we'll go a little bit bigger on the size too. Okay. And then up here, just so that we know which one it is, this in the properties, this top text property here, we're going to call it ammo. Oops, I keep pressing the wrong buttons though. Okay. And so now this ammo, we'll just put up here in the upper right for now. If you're following the presentation on this, they are giving you like actual coordinates for this, but I'm okay if you just kind of manually drag them on there, and then we can slightly adjust wherever you put them later to get them lined up. That's not really an issue. Okay, so I have the text ammo there, and then we're going to make another text object. So let's double click out here, find a text, and then this one I believe is going to be our score. Yep, so we have to do txt score, insert, click on the screen. We're going to take this now and change the color to white. And we'll be consistent. We'll go 24 on the size. The presentation, I think, has you leave it at 12, but I think it's nice to make them a little bit bigger. You could also change the font too as well. I didn't really show you that, but the font here, it's on Arial. If I click these three dots, I mean, you could change it to any of these other fonts. Okay, so I'm going to put that up here. And then this one is in the text part here on the left. We're going to type in score. Okay, so now I know I have lives, ammo, and score up there, and they all should be on the HUD layer. So I'll just test it really quick. And yep, they're staying put like they should, and they're all good. Okay. Now what we want with these the ammo and the score text boxes is we want them to kind of hug against the right side. And if you it might be kind of hard to see on mine. I'm going to zoom in just a little bit. But if you guys can see like this dotted line here, so that represents my viewport size or my window size. So the standard when I start the level, this is as far to the right as I can see. So if you put anything past that line, and if it's on the HUD layer, you're never going to see it. Because it's basically stuck off screen and it's going to stay there. So to demonstrate, I'm going to put the score like halfway in between. So you guys can see that this edge here represents that dotted line, and you can see all the score is cut off. And since it's on a HUD layer that doesn't scroll, you'll see it's just going to be stuck there. So if I shift that score over a little bit more and run the game, it's like it's not there. It still exists. If I ran this in debug, the item would exist. It's just literally sitting here off screen. So you have to make sure that you keep it. So what I would do is make it so that the right edge of the box is right on that line, and do that for both of them. Try to get the right edge of the box basically right on that line. Okay. And then in the properties window for each one, there's something called horizontal alignment, and I'm going to change it to the right so that it will push it to the right edge of the box. I'm going to do the same thing with the score. Horizontal alignment to the right. And then that way when I run it, they're just going to be right there on the edge. Okay? And if that, to you, if this is too close or too tight, you can push them out a little bit. They don't have to be like perfectly hugging right there. Okay. Um, and don't worry too much about like where you're aligning it right now. We're actually going to use code to like make sure they're lined up really nice in our code. So for right now, that should be good. So that's actually what we're going to do next. So let's go back to our event sheet. I'm going to minimize these groups I'm not using. And we're going to go to this on start of layout. And I don't know if you haven't done it yet, I recommend just putting this at the top. Sometimes it's even nice just to make a start group. If you want to make like a start or a system group where like main system commands go, you could do that. Now in the presentation, they don't have you do it, so I won't. But if you wanted to, that's not a bad idea to have a system group at the top. And then that's where like your every tick and your on start of layouts and things will go. So on start of layout, we already have this event where flip moves to the top of the layer, and I believe I explained that in that video. So we're just going to add two more actions to this, and we're going to basically set the horizontal alignment of text ammo and text score. So I'm going to add an action for text ammo, and what we're going to do is we're going to set X. Oops. Now, I'm going to go off the numbers they have in the presentation, but I'm pretty sure they might be incorrect. So we'll see how it looks. So I'm going to set X. And what we're going to do is we're going to type in viewport right. So if I just type in the word viewport, we'll get viewport right. So viewport right basically means like your viewport size or your window size, and it's going to look at the right edge. Essentially, viewport right represents that dotted line is what it does. Okay. And they do viewport right, and then in parentheses, we're going to put the number 3, and I'll explain what that means in a minute. And then we're going to do minus 215. Now this is what they have in the presentation. I'm going to test it and see how that looks. So let's just look at text ammo. I'm going to run this quick and see where it's positioned. Yeah, see that's incorrect because you can see it gets cut off. So I believe like 415 works a little bit better. Let's try 415. Oh, that's too far. So let's go a little bit less. Let's just try an even 300 and see how that looks. Yeah, 300, I think that's good. Okay, you can adjust this as you need to, but basically what we're doing is we're setting the X to basically the viewport right, which is this, and then we just did minus 300 and we just went 300 pixels over. That's essentially what that means. And then this 3 in parentheses, that's representing the layer that we're on. And if you look down here, the layers, they have a number on the right side that represents each layer. And the HUD layer is number 3. So basically we're saying on start of layout, take that ammo and set the X to the viewport right edge minus 300 pixels and keep it on layer 3. That's all that is. Okay. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this event. So I can right click copy. I can right click it again and paste. And then I'm literally just going to replace this one. Instead of text ammo, we're going to make it text score. So what you can do is you can right click on the word text ammo and you can do replace object, and you can replace it with text score. Okay, and there's the same thing there. So now if I run it, okay, for some reason the score ended up way over there. I'm not sure why that is. Um, because I lined them up the same on here. Well, I'm not going to take too much time in putts with that, but essentially whatever you get, yeah, because they're both aligned to the right. Oh, it might have something to do with the size of the box because this one's maybe a different length. That could be it. That could like mess with it. Let's see. Yeah, it was because the sizes of the box were slightly different. So just put them in there, whatever you want, and then you can simply adjust these numbers. So the 215 they originally had maybe was okay. It was just my boxes were too big. So that could be a part of the situation too. Okay. So I'll just go minus 215. We'll do that. And then we'll go here. And maybe if I shrink my boxes down a little bit, that 215 ends up looking pretty good. Yeah, that was it. It was just the size of the box. So I'm going to be honest here. Um, honestly, if this part confuses you with doing this viewport, I mean, you can do it just like I did and then just adjust this number or adjust your box sizes. Um, but if you want to forgo this, if you just want to take these out of your code, I'm fine with that. If you just want to manually just line them up here, that would probably be fine. The only reason it might cause an issue, and we can test later on, is that like actually when you beat the game and you leave layouts and you come back to this, these might unalign. That's I think is why we have this here. But I'll leave that up to you. As long as your game runs and your text is kind of up here positioned where it should be, I'm not going to dock you points if you don't specifically have that code exactly like that. Okay. All right. So moving on from that. Next, what we're going to do is we have to add some global variables. And what we're going to do is we're going to track our ammo, we're going to track our score, and we're going to track our lives. So in order to do that, we need to make a variable. So down here in the open space of your event sheet, you're going to right click and you're going to add a global variable. And we're going to do one called lives. And the default lives is going to be 3. And we're going to make another one called score. And that default value will be 0. And then we're going to make another one called ammo amount. And I'm just going to do like ammo and then AMT. And we're going to have the default value of that be 3. Okay, so now I've got these 3 global variables up here. So now I have a base value for each of those things. So now we can actually code with those. Okay. Now, the first trick is I want to get these text values to constantly track the actual values of the variable, right? So like this lives, I don't want it to just always say lives and then 3 because when I die, I want it to subtract. So we need an event that's going to constantly track this to whatever the variable equals. So what we need to do for that is make an event called an every tick. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just go down here in general, like don't put it in any group, just make a new event and we're going to do a system every tick. And I'm going to take that every tick and we're going to have it up here with the onStart of layout. Make sure when you're dragging it, don't make it a sub event of onStart, otherwise it won't work. It just needs to be even with it. If you're someone that you decided to make a start group or a system group, you can just put this every tick in that group. That would make sense to me. So every tick just means it's constantly happening. Okay. So basically, every tick or constantly, we want to set the values of these text objects to be whatever the variable equals, right? So let's start with text lives. So every tick, I'm going to add an action for text lives. And we're going to do something called set text. Now, when you set the text, whatever you put in quotation marks, it's literally going to write out whatever you put in here. Okay. So this is going to be literal. So I just want it to say the word lives, and then I want it to have a colon, and then I want it to have an empty space. So whatever I type in here, it will put in. And then outside of the quotation marks, this is where you'd actually code it to the variable. So I'm going to do shift 7, which is the and variable, because I'm basically, so This word lives inside the quotation marks, that's referred to as a string. So a string is just a series of characters that the computer is going to read and output, and it's literally just going to write out those characters. And then we're using the and symbol to combine the string, and then we're going to combine it with a value, and we're going to combine it with whatever our lives is. So if I type in the word lives without quotation marks, you'll see it pops up with this word lives, and it has like a little globe here. That's my global variable lives. So basically every tick, it's going to take that text and it's going to write out the word lives colon empty space, and then it's going to write out whatever number my lives equal. Okay, so I'm going to run it, and you'll see up here in the upper left it says lives 3. Now, I haven't programmed it that I lose lives yet, but when we get to that point, when I die and lose a life, this number will change actively. Whenever my lives variable changes, this will change with it because it is on this every tick, which means it's constantly checking it. Okay. Now, this first part here, the string, the computer doesn't care what I type in here. Because it's literally just writing out what I tell it to. We write the word lives because we want the player to see the word lives, and that makes sense to us. But it doesn't care. Like I could type in the word pancakes here, and this code will work just fine because it's still tracking to the lives variable, right? So I would run the game, and anytime I code it to lose a life, this will go down. But now it's telling the player that I have 3 pancakes, which doesn't make any sense. So just keep in mind the strings pretty much are just for the player to see, and you just want it to be something that makes sense for what they're looking at. Okay. So now essentially, I want to do the same event for the text ammo and the text score. So I'm just going to copy and paste this. So copy, paste, and then I'll just paste another one. And then this one, I'm going to replace this object with text score. I'm going to replace this object with text ammo. And then in here, so I'm going to do the score one. I'm just going to change this to ammo. And then this part I'm going to change to ammo amount. Okay, and then this one, oh, I did the wrong thing. What I'll do, yeah, sorry, this one should be score and score. Okay, there we go, score and score, referring to the score variable. And then this one is going to be ammo. And then this part will be ammo amount. Okay. You have to be aware too. So you see if I hover in between these here, like this can be moved. And some people's like they have theirs like this. And so here, all of these just say TXT, so I can't actually tell what these objects are. So I don't know if this code is correct. So I recommend if you can't see the full objects, hover in between here and pull that out so that you can actually read what the objects are. Because a really common mistake is the code will all be correct, but the object selected will be wrong. Like if this said text lives instead, then it would like show my score as the number, but it would say lives, in front of it, which wouldn't make much sense. So especially if variables and things aren't working right, I mean, it's definitely like could be the object being wrong. So it should look like this if it's correct. Text lives to lives and lives, text score to score and score, text ammo to ammo and ammo. Now, it might not make sense to you, but this empty space in here is really important. You can see if I take that empty space out and I run the game, you'll see that the grammar here isn't good. Like the 3 is just hugging that, whereas these other ones have that nice empty space in between. So that space we put in there is very relevant. So after the colon, make sure that there is an empty space there. Okay. All right, we're almost done. I know this has been a long section. Thanks for hanging with it. And obviously, I don't expect you to complete the entire section in one sitting. So obviously, you should be pausing, just remembering where the timestamp is so you can jump back in and get to that spot. All right. So now that we have these variables in place, we can now start to utilize them. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to make it so that when you destroy a knight, you get 100 points. So we're going to go down into the flip combat group, and we had just created this event right here. This is the one where flip is falling and we destroy the knight. We're just going to add a third action there, and we're going to do system add to. So whenever you're doing a command for a global variable, they're always under system. And then I'm going to add to a variable. I'm going to add to score, and we're going to do 100. So now, whenever I destroy a knight, I'm going to get 100 points. Let's go ahead and test it really quick. It should work at this point. So I'm going to go over here. Yep, and you'll see my score went up to 100. And the reason why that changed actively is because that score text is on in every tick, so it's constantly tracking my score variable. So now when I add to the variable, it goes. So it's really important that you guys understand this concept of doing the HUD stuff with attaching the text to a variable, because it's like one of the most common things you do in a video game. So especially for like if you're doing a final project or making a game on your own, you're going to want to know how to do this. So make sure you really grasp this and understand it. And you can always go back and look at this game to see how you did it and remind yourself. Okay. All right. So we got that. Then what we're going to do is we're going to set up some collisions and make the ammo system work. Okay. So I'm going to go down here and add a new event to the flip combat and collisions group. And we're going to do flip on collision with another object. And we're going to do when he collides with the ammo. Now, I've actually had people accidentally put the coconut for this, which you don't want to do. Because if you say flip on collision with coconut, every time you shoot a coconut, he's colliding with it, and he's going to just gain ammo and destroy the coconut, which we don't want. So we're going to do ammo. So basically, when flip collides with the ammo, um, we want to add an action, and we want to destroy the ammo. So we're going to do ammo destroy. Okay, and then we're going to add an action. And we want to actually add to flip's ammo amount. So we're going to do system, because ammo amount is a global variable. We're going to do add to. We're going to add to ammo amount. We're going to add 3, because you see the ammo is a bundle of 3 coconuts. So every time we touch one, we're going to get 3 ammo. Now, we do want to put a limitation on the ammo. We don't want it so that you can just collect infinite ammo. And we don't want it to be that you waste ammo if you're at full and you touch one. So essentially what we're going to do is we're going to set the limit at 9 ammo. Okay. So we're actually going to add another condition to this. So right click on that green arrow there. We're going to add another condition. And we're going to compare how much ammo flip has. So we're going to do system, and we're going to do compare variable. And we want to know that the ammo amount, we want to test if the ammo amount is less than 9. Okay. So basically, in order to actually collect the ammo and destroy it, your ammo amount has to be less than 9. So since 9 is the max, we don't want to actually destroy the coconut and waste this event if we're not actually going to allow you to go above 9. So basically, if I've had 8, this will still trigger. Okay. All right. Then what we're going to do is we want to make it so that your ammo cannot go over 9, right? So right now, the way this is coded, if my ammo is at 8, this will still add 3 to my amount, and it would put me at 11, right? It would bring me over 9. So we want to make it so that no matter what, I can't go over 9 ammo. So I'm going to add another sub event to this. And we want to do system, compare variable. And we're going to test if ammo amount is greater than or equal to 9. And then basically the action here is that we're just going to set the ammo amount to 9. System set value, ammo amount to 9. Okay, so basically the way this event reads is if he collides with the ammo and it's less than 9, it'll destroy and add 3 to ammo amount. However, after you collect it, if his ammo does go above 9, then we're just going to set it to 9. So if I have 8 and I collect one, technically it goes to 11 for like a microsecond, but then this event right away just brings it back down to 9. And the player won't even be able to tell. Like it's just going to stay at 9. It's going to look like 9 to the player. So that's essentially what that event does. Okay. Now we're still going to have the issue, like it's still tracking ammo and everything. So watch, I can run the game. So you can see my ammo in the upper right says 3. I shoot. Oh yeah, so the issue is one, it's not even subtracting from ammo at this point. I can collect the ammo, which is good. I can get myself up to 9, but I can still shoot infinitely because it's not actually subtracting from the ammo, and I haven't put an ammo limitation on my shooting. So now what we need to do is you want to scroll up and find this event here, that this is the event where Flip actually presses space to shoot a coconut. And we're going to put some limitations on this. So the first thing is on the top, on the on space pressed, right after Flip spawns the coconut, we're going to have an action and we're going to subtract from his ammo. So we're going to do system, subtract from, ammo amount 1. Okay. So just by doing this now, it's going to subtract 1, but there's still going to be an issue. So watch this. So watch my ammo. I shoot, it goes down to 2, which is perfect, down to 1, down to 0. But the issue now is I can still keep shooting and that ammo can go into negative numbers. So in order to stop that, we're going to add a condition to this on space press. So I'm going to right click on this green arrow, add another condition. And basically, in order for me to shoot, my ammo has to be above 0, right? So we have to do system, compare variable. We need ammo amount to be greater than 0. Okay, so now when I press space, if ammo amount is greater than 0, it's going to work. So now if I run it, Flip's going to shoot, and you'll see I'm pressing space right now, and I can't shoot. If I grab an ammo, I'll get 3, and then I can shoot again until I run out. So now we have that set up perfectly how we want to. Next thing, we're going to take care of our banana. This is pretty simple. So just go to the bottom of your Flip collisions group, and let's add a new event to the Flip collisions group. And we're just going to do Flip on collision with another object. And when Flip collides with a banana, this one's pretty easy. All we're going to do is destroy the banana and add 5 to score. So I'm going to add an action. Let's do banana destroy. And we're going to do add an action. System, add 2, score, and 5. Okay, so that should be pretty easy. I can test it. So I grabbed the bananas, and you'll see my score went up by 5 for each one, and they got destroyed. Pretty easy there. Okay, we only have 2 things left. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to make it so Flip actually does get destroyed now or dies when he collides with the knight. So I'm just going to bring you back to this. So remember, here's our Flip on collision with knight. The stun stuff here on the top, this is where Flip destroys the knight. This else is where the knight gets Flip, basically. Okay, so remember here, when Flip touches the knight, we ignore input, so Flip can't move. The knight's speed goes to 0. We set the knight's action to swing, and we set the animation to swinging. Now we're going to finish this event in the knight action equals swing event that we put in the knight group, because right here it's going to set his action to swing. So then it's going to go up into the knight action group, and it's going to find knight action equals swing, this event here. And you notice that back in the day when we made this, that we didn't code anything else in here. Because it probably would have been confusing at the time. So now we can finish this event out. So now that the knight's going to reach this swing animation, basically he plays his swing animation at this time. So we're just going to say when the animation finishes, we want basically to do the restart. So I'm going to right click and add a sub event here. And we're going to do knight. And rather than specifying that his attack animation finishes, we're going to say on any animation finished. So this is called on any finished. And then basically when he finishes any animation after he's in his swing action, basically we are going to subtract from the lives. And this is the other reason that we waited till now, because we can actually subtract from lives. So I'm going to add an action. I'm going to do system, subtract from lives 1. Okay. Then I need to restart the layout. It looks awkward if like the moment he touches you, it just like restarts right away. So we're going to add an action and we're going to do a system wait. Wait commands can be pretty useful. And we're just going to wait 1 second. So basically we're going to subtract from lives, wait a second, and then we're going to restart the layout. System restart layout. And these are all system commands. So basically we say when the knight's action equals swing, he'll finish, it'll do all that. Okay. The reason why we say on any finished, it's actually very common that like you might collide with the knight and like you'll shoot him right as you're colliding with him, right? So what happens is this is a common thing that'll happen, and this is why we have to code it this way. So Flip collides with the knight, and let's say you shoot him right as you collide, but he doesn't quite get to the stun yet, and it triggers this. And um, what happens is he sets his animation to swinging, but then he goes to stun because like I think this triggers first technically, but then your coconut still goes through and hits him and stuns him. So the reason why we put on any animation finished here is if you get that situation where you stun him, when his stun animation finishes, it will still do this and like restart the layout. Otherwise, what happens is he would be stunned and he would just stay like that forever and the game would end and you'd be stuck. So um this is just a little bit safer than just saying on swinging animation finish because it's so specific that this way, just in case there's a situation where the knight enters a different animation for whatever reason, it'll still do this when he finishes the animation. So just to go through this with you really quick, he collides with the knight. This will trigger. Flip can't move, knight speed is 0, sets his action to swing and animation to swinging. So he does the swinging animation. It goes up here and it reads action equals swing. When the swing animation finishes, subtract 1 from lives, wait a second, and restart. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. The last thing we're going to do in this video, and this will be quick, is we're going to fix Flip's collision boxes now that we have pretty much everything in the game for like actually Flip's stuff going on here. So in a previous video, I had you do this nice collision box here. Set. If you haven't done it, if yours doesn't look like mine, just right click the middle here and do set to bounding box to get this nice box. But what we're going to do is you'll see that Flip has a lot of empty space here, like where the tail is, and there's all this. So the way it is right now is this empty corner counts as a collision, and we don't want that. So we're going to shrink his box up just a little bit, but we're going to be specific because these angles here all have to be perfectly flat. Otherwise, he can like glitch on objects. It might affect his animations because, like, let's say this was moved up just like a pixel or two. When he has that crooked bottom on there, he might register falling animation when he shouldn't be falling. He could clip into objects. It could be really bad. So it's really important that that just stays flat. So each corner or each of these red boxes, we can type in specific coordinates. So click on this top left box, it should turn yellow. And we're going to put the X here at 17 and we're going to leave the Y at 0. So we're just pushing that in basically. Go to this top right box. We're going to set that to 45 and 0. So 45. Go to this bottom left box here and we're going to do 17 for the X, and we're going to leave the bottom at 100, the Y at 100. And then this bottom right box, we're going to do 45 and 0. Okay, so now these are still perfectly aligned, but our rectangle, we just made it skinnier so that now the collision has to happen right here. Now, obviously, it's going to be a pain to go and do that on every single animation frame of all these animations. So whatever frame you did this on, just right click in the middle and you want to apply to all animations. And now all of them have that skinnier box. And it just makes it relative to like where their animation is. Okay, so I know this one looks a little wonky, but it's fine right there. You can just leave it there. All right, so that should be it for section 5.